Hello everyone, this is Brett Keene. Recently in the Debate Faith Room 2, I was having a friendly discussion with an atheist who was basically playing devil's advocate. However, he felt that it was conceivable and logical that if hypothetically there were to be a God with the attributes that Christians claim and Muslims claim, that somehow it would be possible that a God could make it to where a human being has free will as well as God knowing all things at the same time. The reason why the conversation began was because we were originally, before we got into our discussion, before that, we had had a discussion with Christian Hillbilly as well as some other theists who believed in just that somehow you could actually do things that were completely up to you, that you were responsible for, and that somehow God is not responsible for the choices you make. As most of you have probably heard, a lot of Christians believe that you have the choice whether you want to go to heaven or hell. So if you go, they basically have washed God's hands of your destruction. If you go to hell, and the Christian's mind or the theist mind, it is because you have chosen to do so. And it really, God is just simply there to accommodate you on your choice by allowing you to go to the bad, shitty place. Okay. Well, the atheist that I was talking to, who was trying to make the point that he believed that hypothetically, if there was a God, there would be a great probability of predestination as well as free will at the same time. Predestination in itself, by definition, means that there is no free will. Unfortunately, when you get into debate and discussion with people, whether it be non-believer or religious, they kind of make up their own definition as they go in order to try to describe an analogy. And I think that's one of the reasons why humanity has the issues it does, is because people just make up definitions as they go. I don't think they do it deliberately. I don't think that my non-believer brethren out there are purposely or intentionally doing that. I think that people get so used to putting words in to fill in those blank spots that they don't really think it over too much. But here was the analogy that he gave me. He said, a God will basically create multi-dimensions. He described it as almost like the show Sliders, where he creates all these different vortexes and holes in which man is selected, our essence, our very soul, our consciousness, whatever you want to call it, the very energy that we are. God begins it. He starts it. He is the first reaction. He is the first response. And then once we're created, we're put into an environment that also he created to be able to make choices of our own. This is impossible. If this God were to exist, as the Christians and Muslims see it, they believe that God already knows. They believe that God already was. It would be completely unnecessary for God to create millions of different paths, or even contemplate on which direction he wants to go with his plan. You see, if the God already knows what he's going to do, there's no reason to think about it. And if God sits around and contemplates and thinks about what he's going to do, then this also means that he is a hesitant God and doesn't really know for sure what he wants to do. He's checking all his options. This is not how Christians or Muslims see their perspective of God. They see God as a non-changing entity, an entity that knows and plans and premeditates everything before it even begins. There is no different dimensions or vortexes. There is no table filled with different pathways or rat mazes that he feels that his rats are going to go. The story is very clear. God is represented as living in the past, the present, and the future. The Alpha, the Omega, the beginning and the end, knows all things, Not only is it beyond free will, if you were to go biblically or with the Quran, but the story actually represents God as a God who moves people in certain directions. Not that you have a choice in it. Let me give you an example. The Bible says that God weaves us in the womb. He knows basically what skin color you're going to be. He knows how you're going to talk, how you're going to walk. He knows if before you're born, if you're going to burn in hell or not. He knows if you're going to be a wicked person or a good person. He's also created the very choices that you'll be faced with. He created the very people that you will interact with, and he knows simultaneously who you're going to respond to. He knows if you're going to kill. He knows if you're going to choose to do whatever. There is no infinite way or any kind of ability at any time for you to choose outside of the will or understanding or the knowledge of God. Now, there's people out there who will play semantics and they will say, well, that's not exactly what free will is. But the whole fucking reason why people even debate predestination and free will is they're trying to determine if God sets us on a path of destruction. The concern is, does this God have the knowledge before you're born if you're going to end up in hell and be destroyed? If that wasn't the case, if that wasn't what the story fucking represented, then there's no point really to debate it. No one would care. No one would give a shit. But since the story tells us that this God is a puppeteer and that we are the puppets, and that some of us he will drop off in a toaster oven or a barbecue pit to be cooked thoroughly, that is where the concern is, and that is the whole fucking reason why people even discuss and debate it in the first place. There is no choices. There is no choice that we ourselves can hold to our own and say, this is a choice that we actually made without any interaction of God. This is something that is independent without no external force putting it before us. The choice had been there before you even existed. The choice was created by God. Whether you are disabled, whether you are stable, whether you are normal, whether you end up in a fucking coma for the rest of your life, these are beyond you. These are not things that you get to choose. These are not things that you get to set in motion. You do not get to help God with his fucking plan. If God has the plan set up before you're even born, how do you assist in it? You don't assist in anything. You live, you die, and that is a part of this particular God's representation of a plan. It's accept my love or burn in hell. But he already knows if you're going to accept him. He already knows if you're going to be a godless fucking heathen and shit that's going to raise your middle finger to the sky and flick him off. There's no fucking way around it. And I don't care what kind of bullshit anybody says out there, any kind of nonsense they try to make up in their head. They cannot make a God of predestination, a God of free will and choice. In fact, on a philosophical level, you can't have the God that is attributed to the Bible or the Muslims. Because in order for a God to know all things, that God cannot have faith. And in order for a God to be all-powerful, it will never understand what it means to be weak. And for a God who is omniscient and immortal, it'll never understand death. How can a God be dead? If God is the puppeteer, then the puppets cannot exist without the hands proceeding to guide it. End of story. You've been listening to Brett Keane.